starting the vlog on a Thursday because I think that I'm going to be a bit slower in some of my reading, mentally and emotionally recovering from the will of the many. So I'm making a bit of a pivot. We're gonna read some kind of more Gothic themed books. I think actually I'm reading a bunch of books that I don't know exactly what they're about. I just kind of get a similar vibe. So the first one is called Fragile Animals. The only thing I know about this is that it's a debut. It's relatively new release. I think it came out in March. It only has like 100 ratings on Goodreads, and I'm gonna be listening to this one on audio while I do some like domestic chores and things. In it, I believe we follow a woman who is Scottish, and she is an ex-Catholic who has a relationship with a vampire. That's all I know about it. I'm not sure if it's going to be like bleak, serious, and like bizarre literary, or if it's more of a like sexy Catholic guilt type of book, but I'm kind of down for either. The other book that I'm reading is called O Caledonia, and I'm gonna be doing that on my Kindle. Yeah, I'm also not sure what this one's about. I think it's from 1991, and it's supposed to be very short, like 200 pages, it says on my Kindle. Beloved classic for fans of eye capture, The Castle and Shirley Jackson, some girl living in a like family estate home in England. I think she gets murdered. And I think that's like something that happens very, very early on. I'm not sure. So we're gonna do that one. And then I wanna read a physical book as well. And the one that I am considering for that is Tear, but I don't know when it's gonna arrive. It could be tomorrow, it could be in 6 weeks. There's no estimated arrival date. So if it arrives, we're gonna read it. If it doesn't arrive, and I've read the other two already, I'm thinking about reading Gormenghast. Actually, the first book is called Titus Groan, and I just really like the cover. Sounds cool, looks good. It's about a man named Titus, the 77th Earl Titus Groan, who is expected to rule a Gothic labyrinth of turrets and dungeons. And he can't leave the castle, but he kind of is curious about the world outside. Basically, I'm thinking it's kind of a Gothic Piranesi. So I'm gonna get started with probably Fragile Animals. I'm gonna do some cleaning of my house because I've shoved all of the mess like just out of camera. And I will check in with you probably tomorrow. Yeah, so not sexy vampire, can confirm. It's like gross old man vampire, like almost like Nosferatu. So we're following a poet in Fragile Animals, by the way. She's Scottish and kind of struggling with her creative side and like creative work and connecting to her poetry, and goes to sort of a bed and breakfast boarding house place in the Isle of Bute. And there's one other boarder or person who's staying in that house with her apart from the owner, and that is like this dirty old man. And he really quickly tells her like that he's a vampire and like shows her his fangs and then like his aversion to garlic and all of this stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really wondering at this point, like how weird is this book going to get? I think I'm close to the 40% mark. There's nothing particularly romantic about it yet either. It's very much them walking together and talking and kind of getting to know each other somewhat reluctantly. So it's interesting. We're just kind of starting to get into her Catholic baggage, religious trauma aspect, which I'm kind of interested and intrigued by. It's a bit of a quieter book. It's more literary. I just hope that he takes a shower before things turn romantic, because she's like detailing how there's like dirt worked into his fingers. He's also a taxidermist. There's like hair all over his toes that are like long and dark. I get a bit of an ick from him, and our main character wasn't necessarily immediately attracted to him, but she's not attracted to him. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious where it's going. I'm not sure how weird it's gonna get, but I am enjoying it. It feels different. I think that's kind of all that I've got to say. I just wanted to say hello. I have been reading. Finished Fragile Animals, and I just didn't have the mental capacity to do another check-in before I finished it because I was having some technical problems with one of my computers, and really exciting and very stressful. Today my cat is arriving from Singapore, or like he's arriving at our house from the quarantine center. Very excited. He's a great traveler. He's very healthy, but either way, it's kind of like a bad day for a cat that he has to fly or do anything. He's had a few bad weeks, actually. Quarantine is not his favorite, but he has done a fair bit of international travel before. So just really excited to see him, but also very preoccupied with trying to just make it feel like a comfortable, safe place for him when he arrives. We've got a little treat station set up. We have a little scratching post, like cat grass box for him to lay in station. I'm a little bit scatterbrained at the moment. Today I also went and started Caledonia, a very lovely coffee shop, and I am loving this so much. It is so autumnal, and the prose. Okay, you know what? First I will talk about Fragile Animals, because I actually really loved Fragile Animals a lot too. It was such a huge surprise. So most of the book, this is kind of like one of those literary books where there's not a lot of plot, but the character is doing like internal work and doing like a lot of talking to you, the reader, but also to like other people as they're working through and processing some of this stuff. And so our main girl, she is sort of telling you about events and things that have happened in her life, but constantly like referencing this period of time in her life where something big happened. There's some kind of cataclysmic thing related to her faith and like the church and family and everything that she kind of refers to as BC and AD. And it's only in the last few pages that you actually find out what that is and that you get some resolution from that. I would say that this book is actually a little bit mismarketed, and so yes, it does deal with Catholic guilt. That's a really big part of it, but it also deals very heavily with like mommy issues. When she's walking along the beach with this vampire guy, a lot of their talking is confessionals, like under the moonlight, sort of both telling and sharing about different aspects of their lives and stuff. And their relationship, it's like very brief. Like, do not go into this for vampire smut. I hardly even noticed that it happened. And I will say he did shower, which is very good. Still a dirty old man. Not a Edward Cullen by any means, but you know, I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was wonderful and just felt super fresh. Highly recommend if you want a literary leaning, weird girl kind of story. So that was Fragile Animals. Really, really enjoyed that one a lot. The audiobook narrator was also wonderful. She has a bit of like a Scottish accent that sometimes thickens when she's doing voices for other characters, so I couldn't listen to it quite as fast as I usually would listen to an audiobook, which is just kind of funny to me, but she did a great job on the narration. So now I can talk about O Caledonia. I have read the introduction and I think up to chapter 3, I want to say. But yeah, I'm like 10% through. I'm just at the beginning and I don't want to jinx it, but I could see this becoming a favorite of the year, if not an all-time favorite. We begin with the death or the aftermath right after Janet, the main character, has died. She dies like under this stained glass window with her family crest that's like dying but unconquered. It's this like drafty Scottish gloomy mansion and she's being grieved by her pet jackdaw. It doesn't seem like she's really got a whole lot of personal, close human relationships. And then we kind of immediately go back in time to when she's born, and I think we're gonna just trace her life the whole way through until she's murdered. What makes this such an incredible reading experience so far is the way that Elspeth Barker has of arranging the words on the page. She does it in such a way that it just doesn't feel like you're reading words anymore. Somebody is shouting out there. But the way that she writes these sentences, it just feels so entrancing and vivid and almost like this book is meant to be read out loud. Like there's just such a beautiful, perfect cadence to it. I'm obsessed. This is the kind of prose that I, as like an aspiring author or like as a writer, would absolutely love to be able to, the skill, the diligence, and vocabulary to craft together. I'll read a little snippet of it to you. So this is about Janet, the main girl's hatred of the sea, and she explains it this way. There was so much of it, flowing and counterflowing, entering other seas, slyly furthering its interests beyond the mind's reckoning. No wonder it could pass itself off as sky. It was infinite a voracious marine confederacy. Such a good line. I love that. I actually cut my time at the cafe a little bit short when I started to read that first chapter, because when it's talking about how her jackdaw was grieving her, I was sort of feeling like a little emotional about it, and just thought, like, you know what, if I'm gonna cry, I don't think I want to do it in a cafe sitting beneath a big oak tree, even though that does sound pretty romantic. It's a beautiful book so far. Anyway, I'm 10% through. I will definitely continue to read a little bit more of it today. I don't think I'm going to finish it, but loving O Caledonia. As you can see, Mr. Kitty is doing absolutely fine. I was gonna leave him upstairs, but he started to scream, and so now he's probably gonna be running around yelling in the background. But he seems to be doing really good, and we spent the last 24 hours just laying in bed together and like reading. So I'm super happy. I think he's super happy too. I'm also 90% of the way through O Caledonia, so I thought that I should give you a little update. This book is really interesting because it takes place right after World War II. So there's kind of a shadow or a lot of like echoes of the war and how it affects the people around Janet and even Janet as she's growing up. The book is also linear, but it's kind of broken up into episodic chapters where we're getting little glimpses into Janet's life and just how the time that she was born, she grew up with everything she needed and like pretty well off, but never really got the love or attention or affirmation that she needed. So she becomes this like very internal sort of person that doesn't like people very much and spends a lot of her time immersed in literary worlds and just spending time connecting with animals. There is this really great quote where she says that she wants to be a bookish spinster attended by cats and parrots until the time that she might become ethereal, pure spirit untainted by the woes of the flesh, a phantom driving with the winds. What fun she would have as a ghost. She could hardly wait. I'm just still really enjoying this book. It's a bit slower paced, and there's a ton of like morose, creepy flower imagery just all throughout that kind of reminds me a little bit of Rebecca. There's a passage in Rebecca that I think about all the time where she is describing this wall of like crimson rhododendrons. I noticed also that both of these books are based in Scotland, which was not intentional, but what a coincidence. So I'm gonna finish O Caledonia, and then I decided that I am not gonna read Tear yet, I don't have it, but I can't stop thinking about Gormenghast. Titus Groan is the first 370 pages of this book, so yeah, we'll see what I can actually finish of it before I need to edit and upload this vlog. But this is what's coming next. Next time I check in with you, I will give my final thoughts on O Caledonia and then first impressions of Titus Groan. Hello there. So I have finished up with O Caledonia, and as predicted, I really enjoyed this. There's nothing supernatural about it, but there is sort of an uncanniness and supernatural bend to the way that Janet sees and experiences the world, because she's so bookish. Her perception of the world ends up being quite colorful, and I just found it really wonderful. Like, there's so many references to witches and mermen and just all of the descriptions that were really beautiful. I liked her as a character as well. The end was kind of gut-wrenching and very surprising to me. I really did not guess who did it. Like, this book was not a whodunit at all, but I didn't guess who it was. So if you're looking for a really nice coming of age Gothic story, really liked O Caledonia. Totally underrated. And another underrated book is Gormenghast. I have actually made a lot of progress on this book. So this is actually all 3 books in the existing trilogy. So the end of book 1 that I'm reading to is right here. Where I am currently is like right here. So I'm just around halfway through, just a little less than. And part of the reason that I didn't want to check in yet was because I was still trying to get a grasp of like what this book is about, what the world is about, where is this plot going, who are the main characters, because it is a little bit slower moving. That being said, it is not difficult to understand who is who, because the very first thing that you notice is that the names are incredible. They're very unfortunate events, Dickensian sort of names, like Prune Squalor is our doctor. There's Lord Sepulchrave, and that's Lord Groan. He is like the master of the house. There's Steerpike, who is turning into being quite an interesting character. He was a kitchen boy, but he's very ambitious, and he has this one quote that I hit pretty recently, like, isn't there a bit of monstrosity in all ambition? And so he's kind of rising up the ranks of Gormenghast Castle. But I think one of my favorite characters so far is probably Fuchsia, the daughter. She's kind of like the princess character, and everybody sort of comments that she's a little bit ugly. She's a little bit like of an odd duck as well. She doesn't have a whole lot going on in her head, but I think that they're really underestimating her. Fuchsia has some different nooks and crannies and like hidden places within the castle that she spends a lot of her time roaming. And then of course there's Gormenghast Castle itself, which is absolutely a character of its own. It is so vast and sprawling with so many unknown corners and towers that Fuchsia can go and disappear for a fortnight and her father has no clue where she has gone. So yeah, absolutely wonderful characters. There's no Michael, there's no Kel, no kind of arbitrary contemporary sort of names going on here whatsoever. We follow all of these characters to varying degrees. As I said, Steerpike is probably going to be a pretty significant one. Plot has just started to kind of really get moving in the last couple of chapters, and because we're kind of exploring everybody from like the cook and the wet nurse all the way up to Lord Groan himself, we really get an impression of how stratified it is, which is part of what makes Steerpike so interesting, is that he's trying to climb the social ladder. But it's so stratified and there's so much hierarchy and elaborate rules about how you're supposed to behave that seems to be kind of containing and limiting and restricting everybody. So it's a very interesting kind of book, but yeah, there is like a little bit of an upstairs downstairs feel to it. The first book in this trilogy is actually called Titus Groan. That is the son. The book starts off with Titus being born, and everybody's been waiting for the Groans to finally have a male heir, and so he's like quite young still in the beginning of this book, but this essentially kind of creates a bit of a shift, especially for people like Fuchsia, because we finally have the heir. I don't really want to get too much into the plot, partially because I feel like I'm just starting to understand what exactly is going to unfold, and also because it's so character driven, it's better that you just read it yourself and experience it firsthand. Because the way that this is written, I'm just gushing, but the way that this is written, it's a little bit of a slower read because every sentence is absolutely like lush and incredibly descriptive. It's still not that purple, like it's always taking you somewhere. But there's a real like Edward Gorey sort of vibe to the whole world and all of the characters. Like I'm sure you can kind of guess that just based on the illustration on the cover. But there's also kind of a dreamy whimsicalness as well that, you know, it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland. This is really just unlike anything that I've probably ever read. I'm loving it. And there's also these kind of little illustrations. I think they're done by the author. I'm trying to find one. They're sort of quicker sketches. There, for example, you can kind of get a bit of a view of what those are like, but they're all throughout. And some of them are more detailed. Some of them are just really quick little, there's the character. Yes. Loving Gormenghast so far. It's been just a pleasure to read and to sink into. Loving the characters. Yeah, I'm really glad that I picked this up, and I'm really surprised that more people actually don't talk about it, because I can see this appealing to so many different people. I can see it appealing to fantasy people, even though there's no explicit magic, there's not really any swords. There is just this real style to it. And then there's a bit of a classic feeling to it as well, where it, as I've said, it's kind of like a Dickens or really Victorian kind of novel, but it's a lot easier to read than Dickens. So I am going to stop talking. I'm going to keep reading. Maybe I will finish it and come back to you. Maybe I will give you a quick update. I don't know. We're going to find out. But Titus Groan is going very, very well. Very, very well. Okay, I have two things to say. I'm very, very close to finishing, so that's the end. This is where I am. Number one, Steerpike is turning out to be an awful manipulative person and a delight to read. Number two, I just read one of the most intense scenes of my life. It was involving a meat cleaver, and just the way it was written, the staging, the descriptions of movement and emotion and like all of the characters involved. Everything about it was incredible. It was perfection and it was really so stressful. That's all I have to say. Hello. Okay, I am checking in really quickly before I run out of natural light, which has pretty much already happened, but I finished Gormenghast. Well, Titus Groan, just the first book in the series. And I'm trying to avoid hyperbole here, but I really feel like I just read one of the best books ever written. Like, this was just a masterpiece. And maybe I will retract that once I have a little bit more time to think about it and process it, but I really don't think so, because this book is just so beautifully written. Like, I know I've said that over and over again, but it really, really, truly is. It is wonderfully executed just on a prose level in terms of characterization and the world building, because the characters in this book are living in a fishbowl. They are their own little ecosystem, all kind of trapped together in this set of rituals and traditions that are all tied to the Groan family, which is the hereditary lordship. This book takes place over Titus Groan's first year of life, and it really focuses very heavily on Steerpike, who I talked about in my last check-in. He's the kitchen boy, and he's slowly kind of manipulating people and exploiting the system and these like archaic traditions in order to kind of move up the ranks in this very stratified, hierarchical environment. So that is just super entertaining, watching this really villainous character achieve his villainous ends. And it's just a very funny book. There's so much satire and irony and sarcasm. I would love for Tim Burton to make an animated series on Gormenghast. I think that would just be an incredible experience, and he would do it so well. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you heard about a book that you maybe haven't heard of or that wasn't on your radar before, because I know that these 3 books are not necessarily super top of the list or whatever, but if you're gonna read one book, I kind of want to say Gormenghast, but I think it really depends on what you're looking for, because I obviously enjoyed Gormenghast slightly more than the others, because I love cozy, Edward Gorey, gothy, like peak goth fantasy. Fragile Animals was also really, really enjoyable. You can probably hear my cat chewing in the background. And Caledonia, again, like all new favorites. All of them. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've read Gormenghast or any of the other books, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Otherwise, have a great day, evening, whatever, wherever you are. Bye.